All right, guys, today I'm going to show you how to use the Michael S. Jenkins Master Time Calculator. Disclaimer, I'm in no way affiliated with Michael S. Jenkins. I've corresponded with him a handful of times, but it's been almost 2 years since I've ever talked to him over email. He really will only talk to you if you're interested in buying one of his products, okay? He's a salesman. He doesn't really give a shit, I'm just going to be honest. But he does know some things and can open the doorway to knowing certain things about how nature works, I guess, but went under the lens of tradable markets. Okay, so there's kind of like 2 to 3 calculators within this calculator. Okay, the right one is what I'm going to show you first. This is probably the kind of the least useful one. All it is that you put in a date and you put in another date, and it tells you the exact distance between those 2 dates. It will default to the time that you open the application. For the second one, the first one will default to March 24th of 2000. It'll tell you in all the major time increments the distances, right? And these are basically rounded. Oh, okay. I think this is the remainders if you're going for whole numbers. So like, yeah, so this will tell you the exact value if you're looking only in minutes, or you could say it's 24 years, 30 weeks, 4 days, 16 hours, and 4 minutes, right? Okay, that's about all that's useful for, though. So I'm done with that. Just know that this is American time, so that it goes month, day, year, okay? And for if you're going to do time of day, hours, minutes, seconds, and then AM or PM, okay? Very simple, very simple. I'm going to move on from that now, okay? Up top here, you've got a calculator that can spit out stuff here. It's kind of useful, but it won't inherently be useful right away, because as you see, I just clicked run right away for 25 cycles, right? I didn't specify any special type of math for it. So all it did just by pressing run was count for, it goes exactly 1 day forward, or I could count it backward and it could go back exactly backward 1 day. That's not useful. However, ignore this for a second. Down here, you can look at these. These boxes will influence this calculator that's up here that's spitting out here. I don't know why this one is above it, because this right here is actually connected to this calculator down here. Okay, so you could run natural squares from this day forward. Now you're going to get more potentially useful dates, or you could do square of 9. Here it's going to spit out both values, so make sure to uncheck one, and then it'll give you the ones only that. Right? Otherwise, you're going to confuse yourself. So here it's counting forward in a square of 9 base 100. Okay? And it'll tell you those dates. Now, these dates aren't necessarily going to be special. Even if it's a high or low on the market, it could, but you would, what's your value going to be? What if you did 95? You're going to get different values, right? So that is going to take your own mathematical research to find out if that's useful at all to you, okay? And personally, I don't study the square of 9 that much, so I don't actually completely understand. I guess that's just the full size of the square, but again, to me, square of 9 is can be useful, but again, it's a little complicated in trying to figure out how it works. You could also do square roots, which are a little more easy, more obvious to figure out. Usually, when you're doing square roots, it's going to go forward about 3 weeks every time, as you can see, but not always. Not always exactly, but you're usually going to get about 2 to 3 weeks, somewhere in that time range when you're going forward in square roots. Okay, that's how you use that, and make sure you do count forward, count backward, and you put in the number of cycles that it's going to do. Okay. Now what I use this for is this and this, okay? So when you are, let's say, you're calculating high-low values, trying to get a function of something. So, this is a very prominent high. So that very high value of 21,214.5 could be an important value, or taking the square root of that, or doing a cube root of that, or squaring it, or cubing it, or making it a quartic, or taking it to any power, or multiplying it by the square root of 2, square root of 3, square root of 5, multiplying it by pi, taking the reciprocal of that value, multiplying it by the angle at which price is rejecting, provided that your chart is scaled correctly, which is a very complicated thing, and I don't even fully understand that. So the best scaling I was able to find for charts is pi, but it will depend. This is a very high value asset because its values is like 20,000, whereas most stocks and stuff you're going to be looking at, they're going to be, you know, anywhere from like $5 to a few $100s, right? So that's going to influence your scaling a lot because this asset is much bigger anyway, or it's a derivative, but anyway, beside the point. So let's say you had a function though. Let's say you wanted to say, okay, this high is 21,214.5. So what you would do, and let's just say we're taking a straight value. So we're going to go back to that date and we're going to say at July 2024, and we're not going to know the exact time of day, so I'll just say like 10 a.m. or something just to make this video faster. But it was July 11th, right? So at July 11th, 7/11/24, or you can do 2024, okay? And considering that was a down close day, probably earlier in the morning, it reached that high, so we're just going to estimate that around 10 a.m. So you would do 10 o'clock a.m., change the P to an A, and you are going to go forward in that exact value from the high. Or again, I'm just doing a very simple example to show you how to use the program. You would probably be using a mathematical function trying to derive a different series of digits from this number. But we're just going to put in just the exact number, so 21,214.5. 21,214.5. So that many minutes later, you click add or subtract time. Now, here you choose whether you're adding or subtracting. You can actually check both. If you do that, it will just subtract, I believe. So just make sure you only have one or the other checked. Now, the reason you go forward is to try to predict the future. The reason you go backward is to verify that it is a valid cycle. Because if you go backward and then it hits a previous high or low, there's a higher chance that it will predict the future. Okay? So anyway. Oh, I meant to do 2024. My bad. Sorry. I don't know why I put 2021. Okay, so anyway, not like that matters. Just change the number there. But okay, so now we're going to go look at July 26th and see what happened. I'm not saying that anything big happened here, but actually you can see it kind of was a pivot low right there, right? Not exactly, went a little lower, but then immediately went higher. But yeah, kind of a swing low right here. You could have caught an up move. If you had a wider stop, you could have taken profit somewhere there, or you would have taken profit the next day or something like that, right? Okay. Again, I'm not saying that it's usually using the flat number isn't the most valid cycle. Usually you have to multiply it by square root of 2, square root of 3, square root of 5, pi, a Fibonacci number, or, well, those are okay, but usually like square roots or cube roots or cubes or squares, multiplying it by those kinds of things, taking reciprocals. That's where you're going to get the more valid numbers. Okay, but anyway, that's how it works. Okay. That said, you might say, well, I want to see hours. Well, if we go forward that many hours, it's going to go way into the future, right? Well, that's not here yet, but you could save that date if you want and say there could be a turning point on December 12th of 2026, right? However, if you've seen his videos, you know he talks about shifting the decimal point. So if you're going to a higher time increment value, you're going to have to make the number a lower value to make it make more sense, right? Okay, so if we go the same digits, because digits are what matters, but we move the decimal point to get a time that's closer in the future, we're going to find something that's this year. And this date already passed, so let's go see. October 7th. All right, so October 7th actually comes out to right about the day before the swing low right here, before it moved up. So again, actually kind of valid, because on October 7th, it hit a low. The next day it went a little bit lower, but then it moved up after that. So that would have been a point where maybe you would want to have a swing low. That said, though, it could have at that time looked like a high, right? See, because it went up and then it went down. So you might have thought this was a high and then tried to sell short on the 7th or after the 7th, and you would have lost. But again, I've said in other videos, you don't generally, unless you have really good data, you don't really want to short the NASDAQ. It's much better to long. The probability of winning a long trade that's a 1-to-1 on the NASDAQ is greater than 50%, even if it's a small amount, and the probability of running a short trade on the NASDAQ is less than 50%. right? And the reason I'm saying that is it's just self-evident. If this thing keeps going up in the long run, that means it goes up more than it goes down, which means that long trades are more likely to win than short trades, right? Pretty easy to grasp that concept, right? Anyway, but then you could say, okay, well, I want to see what's 212 days later. Well, that hasn't happened yet, so we won't be able to verify anything. But you could say, okay, I want to see what's 21 weeks later. And then you'd see December, which again hasn't happened yet. You could also say 21 months later, but again, that's not going to be, it's going to be a year and a half away. So it's not really important. But then at that point, you'd want to say 2.1 months in the future. So then you get to September 13th, which it was a swing high. But again, seeing as this is not a very bearish asset generally, shorting highs is not always as good as buying lows, right? But yes, that did actually come out to a high. It trended down for a few days. I mean, it went higher, but price also went lower afterwards, right? Again, not saying it's the most valid. You usually have to use more complicated functions to get better time cycles or pivot dates. And then if you wanted to look, well, obviously we don't know what's going to happen 2 years in the future. You could write it down and wait for that, but you could do 0.21 years in the future and get September 26th. And lo and behold, that is a swing high. So again, showing you that this is actually, it works decently well, even when you take flat values. But that's pretty much how it works. Okay, so I don't want this video to be too long. It's already over 10 minutes, so it's just a brief explanation of how it works. Honestly, just play with it yourself and you'll figure it out anyway. Okay, so and let me just say, when it comes to trading, if you want to succeed as a trader, you have to do it yourself. So I understand that some of you didn't understand how to use this and you asked me for help, but listen, I didn't know how to use it either when I first downloaded it. How did I figure it out? Trial and error and experimentation. And I'm telling you this, you will not be a profitable trader unless you yourself are willing to go through trial and error and experimentation and figuring it out yourself. You cannot rely on anyone else to make you a profitable trader. People can give you little tidbits that will help you, but there will come a point in your trading career where you have to let go and not ask anyone else for help, and you have to figure it out yourself. And there's no other way to succeed as a trader unless you are behind closed doors with really rich people who have knowledge that you and I don't know. Okay, but if that's the case, you're not going to be watching this video. Okay, you're watching this video because you're probably some poor guy who wants to make it rich one day. Okay, so anyway, if that's the case, I'm telling you, you have to figure it out yourself. So I hope this video helps you, but the only way you're going to learn this is by experiencing it. So just play around with it and figure out how it works. It's pretty straightforward. It's not very complicated. I just gave you a brief explanation of how it works. I don't even really I don't use square of 9 as much because I'm more a visual person. So I don't know exactly what changing the value here for square of 9 means. I don't know. As you'll see though, I did square of 9 forward and you're seeing its way in the future, right? That's because I'm on years. So I did 88 square of 9 years into the future. Okay, obviously if I did minutes and we run that, you're going to get different times. So hey, maybe that could be useful for day trading, right? I would say probably stick with 100 to start and try to figure out, maybe these are reversals, right? But again, not exactly. This is not the most well explained. So in my opinion, you would have to study his square of 9 program, which is another program that he has on his site to download. I don't use it that much. I do have it, but yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about square of 9 in my opinion. I mean, you can use it. It definitely is effective. So if you can figure it out, figure it out. But I just use mainly this to get dates in the future, right? And it'll just spit out the date right there. And I sometimes use this, and I almost never use this, or this, right? I really just use this and this. Okay. So anyway, take care, guys, and see you next time.